We'll be speaking of the world of time and karma. Michelle just taught me how to do this, and now I forgot. There we go. That's incredibly unfortunate. Hear yourself breathing. That's safe. Can you still hear me? Yeah. All right, but not hear me breathing. Good. Let's see. Let me put this down. It's good to see all of you. You really don't look like you need to talk. You look fully enlightened already. I want to talk today about Baizhang's fox and go through the whole magnificent story, which is full of the great themes of awakening, of the kind of suffering that we come into, which is repetitive and feels intractable and feels personal, that somehow someone has cursed us in some way, and we haven't figured out why or how to get out of it. And also the great theme of time and the non-linear quality of time. I have to put this somewhere where it doesn't annoy me. This is so gross. Don't worry, I'm enjoying this. I like fluffy. It's like a wedding. Very fun. 10,000 mistakes. So when we first, before we even see the first traces of the footprints of the ox, the footprints of the fox, there's a feeling that we haven't yet found the path, and nothing yet has quite happened, and the world is a kind of made of material that really is sort of not related to us or not to do with us. It's sort of dead material. And we're kind of a planet, moving around this sort of bare universe. And it's just us. And there's this wonderful quote I found from this mathematician philosopher who was educated at Cambridge and then ended up at Harvard after one of his sons had died in World War I. He ended up at Cambridge, and he was a philosopher, and people would go to his lectures and they thought he was absolutely brilliant, but no one could understand a word he said. And that was sort of a mark of how brilliant he was, because no one could understand. But his name is Alfred North Whitehead, and he says, "There persists a fixed scientific cosmology which presupposes," so this is like a first principle that you don't realize that is your life is resting on, is sort of invisible. "It presupposes the ultimate fact of an irreducible brute matter or material spread through space in a flux of configurations. In itself, such a material is senseless, valueless, purposeless. It just does what it does do, following a fixed routine imposed by external relations, which do not spring from the nature of its being. So that's a description of the world before any sense, glimmering of awakening yet. It is this assumption that I call scientific materialism. Also, it is an assumption which I shall challenge as being entirely unsuited to the scientific situation at which we have now arrived. And then we come to Fox. So everyone who's here in this room has some glimmering and real lived experience of the world being not dead matter, but somehow some kind of luminous, living field with which we can feel ourselves and see in the world. We get glimpses of it at first, and sometimes we'll get whole, like a avalanche of it, where it just takes us over. And then, it disappears for a while. And then we have our world of suffering. So I'm going to read the first part of the koan, and maybe we'll get to the latter part. We'll see what I do at the time. And then I want to talk a bit about some of these great themes. When Baizhang gave a talk, an old man was always there listening with everyone else. So that's the moment when you find yourself in a zendo, or you're reading books, or there's some kind of practice where you're listening. Some part of you is turning yourself towards listening with everyone else. So you've got companions at this point in your journey. When they left, he left too. One day, he stayed behind. Baizhang asked, "Who are you standing here in front of me?" And the old man said, "It's true, I'm not a human being. In the far, distant past, in the time of the Kashyapa Buddha, I was a priest living on this mountain." A monk asked me, on this mountain, "Is an enlightened person subject to the law of cause and effect or not?" And I replied, "Someone like that doesn't fall into cause and effect. Because of this, I've been reborn as a fox for 500 lives. And now I beg you to say a turning word for me and release me from this wild fox body." And then he asked me, he asked Baizhang, "Is an enlightened person subject to the law of cause and effect or not?" And Baizhang said, "You don't cut the chains of cause and effect." And at these words, the old man was deeply enlightened. So where do I want to begin? I think I want to start with karma and the experience of suffering. And there's two forms of suffering, and the one that your practice addresses has a very different character than the suffering that I would say is fitting. So you, after being here for a week, you have some sense of the difference, where there are some of you actually all of us have some very hard things. If you're a human being, or even if you're a fox, you will encounter actual suffering where there'll be someone close to you will die. Or, God, there's just so many forms of suffering. Someone you love is in trouble and you can't do anything about it. A forest that you love is being cut down and you can't stop it. You see, you have an animal that's close to you, a dog or a cat, and they come to a point where they're suffering so much, and you have to decide: do I let them go? So all those forms of suffering are, there's a kind of profound sense of helplessness in them. And the helplessness itself is a component of the fitting quality of it, that we're turning towards it, and it doesn't contract the heart, it doesn't close the heart. You can feel that kind of suffering opens the heart, where if you've lost someone or you've lost something that is dear to you, or someone you love is suffering and you can't control it, you feel it opening your heart, and there's a kind of beautiful sense of heartache to it, a kind of profound tenderness that is a sense of communion and openness. And that, I would say, is a fitting form of suffering. It's there's a kind of joy in it, that you're here inside your life, and you're participating in life, and you're standing in your life, and you're having what belongs to you to hold. But this other kind of suffering, the fox kind, the karmic suffering, is it doesn't seem to pass through you. The fitting suffering seems to pass through, sort of wash through us. But this karmic suffering has a feeling of hardness to it, a sense of refusal in it. And there's also a sense of the repetitive nature of it, and an intractable quality to it, that also a sense of effort. So if you feel some place in your life where some trouble, that no matter, how hard you try, how many, really well-written letters you send to that person, for some reason they just don't get it. They just don't improve, or inwardly, where you just keep coming into the same trouble in myself, where I have these good intentions. I know better than to do something. I know it causes me pain every time I do it, and it makes things worse. That's the thing about karmic. You're in the karmic realm, is not only does the effort not fix it, it actually goes the opposite direction. Things seem to get worse. They seem to get more tangled. They seem to get more solidified with any kind of effort that I put into it. And what else about this? There's a sense of that my world is opposed to me, that somehow what is happening is in opposition to me. and it's blocking me from my true life. My true life is right over there, where, I don't know. My sister doesn't send me these kinds of emails that so annoy me, or that my sister becomes a trustworthy person. That's the other one. You've decided beforehand what someone else will be. That's the other part of the karmic realm too, is where you've placed something outside of reach in some sort of imaginary future that you're sure it's the destination that you want to get to. There's a sense of certainty about this, about the situation. I know the way the coffee should be made. I know the way the coffee is an amazing source of karmic suffering. The other aspect of the karmic suffering is you'll feel an exaggerated, exaggerated sort of level of emotionality. There's the stakes seem incredibly high, and the amount of rage or feeling of injustice, or the feeling of being longing, or the feeling that I will never be loved, this person will, the stakes are, the feelings are so, is a kind of high drama. A really exaggerated, concentrated sense of emotion. And I think that's another thing you'll know in the karmic realm, that there's a sense of like a thickness in the field, huge amount of energy concentrated in this one place. Even if someone's name, that someone's in your karmic, your portion of the world's karma, is if someone's name, whenever someone's name comes up, you feel this like tremendous compulsion to assert your view, to their wrongness needs to be established, or your rightness, or your own wrongness. If there'll be some name or some memory or situation, and the feeling of the attack can go inwardly. The other thing that you'll notice is a sense of claustrophobia. Somebody said that to me this week, that it's this feeling of the world getting very small, and it's almost like, and also it's like a windowless realm where the actual world has kind of disappeared, and you've been placed in the basement and in some sort of little concrete room. There's no windows. And there's just like piles of legal papers all around you, and it's really dusty, and you're making your case, you're just making your case. And also the primary feeling is a feeling of separation. And you're in the karmic realm when you feel separate from life. Somehow there's something that you feel you need that you can't get to. And that's not here, and you have no way of reaching it. There's a feeling of compulsion, that something's got to be done about this. You notice this in the coffee also. It's got to be done. Something's got to be done about this problem. It's got to be done also now. It has to be done now. This feeling of, someone didn't do the windows right, and even though it's the middle of meditation, I've got to go up and close the windows, or open the windows, or turn off the lights, or turn on the lights, or so you'll notice that. And part of the retreat, one of the things that a sesshin will do is it'll hold, it'll thwart the compulsion. So you actually, you sit with the compulsion, or you sit with the sorrow, or you'll sit with yourself while you're writing the email. You won't actually be at your computer writing and sending it. You'll be with yourself while all the activities, like Buddha's enlightenment night, where you're staying when, in Baizhang's fox koan, that moment where, and one night he stayed. And that's one of the primary moments of importance in your practice, and this will happen over and over and over again. And we try to set up the conditions with which it's possible, so you have the most support you can have to stay with yourself when all of the storms in your mind and in your body and your heart, all the karmic energy is at play, but you're not acting out the life of the fox, and you have some kind of steadiness in your being, and you'll have something in you, even if it's just one molecule of your awakened mind notices, I'm suffering. That's the whole of the practice there. You have the whole of the awakened mind. You have some capacity and possibility of your karma unbinding itself. Your karma, one way to think of karma is, it's very popular to think of it as some kind of, in the realm of right and wrong or good and bad. I did something terrible and now I have to purify it, and then my life will be, I won't suffer in this kind of way. That's not how we hold karma in Zen. Karma is simply your own awakening in its concentrated and dark form. If you didn't have this portion of karmic energy and heat, you wouldn't have anything, any fuel, anything to bring into awakening. We actually need, it's your particular portion of the world's awakening, and it's come to you in your form. No one else can live your life and awaken this portion of the universe. And it's just amazing to look around the room and you can feel that's true. Each person has their own portion which they're bringing into the light. And they need some of this karmic fuel, and it needs to mean something to you in order for you to have a kind of courage with which, and daring with which to stay. One night he stayed, one moment you stayed, and every moment that you stay, you bring some portion of your life that was not available to you, some larger portion of freedom, which is now not only available to you, but you can feel that every person you meet enters the field of that freedom. And you offer that freedom to everyone you meet. So we do it not just for ourselves, it simultaneously pours out in every direction. And that's really a marvelous thing about what we're doing in Sesshin. Let's see, I think I want to talk about the turning words. So that moment of staying. It's true, I'm not a human being. You'll start to get a real feel for that. And that's an experience of the sense of self, of a defined and solid self, begins to really break down. And sometimes you'll notice this when you look in the mirror and you think, I just don't recognize this face, this person. Or you'll utterly forget about yourself. You're sitting there waiting for your interview and feeling, I don't know, terrified or like you want to have something to say to the teacher and then you're overwrought. You're living a fox life, like right there in the cloister, and you look up and there's a hummingbird playing in the fountain. And you can almost feel the water on you yourself, and you forget that you're a human being. In fact, you are not a human being. This is really interesting, this part. In the time of the far distant past, I was a priest living on this mountain. So that gets very blurry here. This sense of past and future and who I am and who you are. And you don't even need someone else's life to feel this. Like, you just, in your own life, you think back to a time in the past, and it's as if you don't know if you were that Baizhang or this Baizhang. It's very fluid time. The linearity of time begins to break down, and it becomes more like matter, where there's concentrated portions of matter that hold more time, and there's less matter, and the time gets slower, and there's more mass, and the time really speeds up. So time gets linearity starts to break down. And he gets banished to these 500 lives as a fox because he tells his student that, if you're enlightened, you don't have to worry about this. You're outside the laws of cause and effect. And some portion of us hopes that's true. I mean, I cannot tell you how many people have come into the interview room hoping that would be true, hoping that this would be the last time that I would have to suffer in this way. And if I could just purify my mind, or if I could just really understand the Dharma, or if I could just understand the Dharma like you do, Allison. Clearly you don't suffer. So that's a kind of, you can see that's a sort of, I don't know, like a naive innocence in that. A sort of refusal to enter my life in some way, to enter into the suffering and the troubles that I will not be able to control. And you can feel that in every life here, that we will all, when the Sesshin is over, turn towards our life and will step into, we don't know. We only know that we will encounter some kind of suffering. I think awakening doesn't give you a life without suffering. You're just not afraid of it. You're not afraid of whatever you might appear. You don't know what it means. You're feeling your way into the next moment, and you're letting it affect you and change you. You don't know who you'll be in the next moment. So I was very struck by this moment in the koan where Baizhang says, "Now I beg you," which I think is so beautiful. Now I beg you. He's come to this sense of, I can't do this on my own. That's a really beautiful moment, a crucial moment, where the self releases myself into the world, and it's no longer up to me to make myself my way into awakening. I actually can't do this by myself. Now I beg you to say a turning word and release me from this wild fox's body. So I'm going to say a little bit about the turning words. I remember the first time I ever heard that phrase, and even just hearing the phrase did something to me. I felt a sense of possibility, that it might be possible, a sense of space, and sense almost like someone had opened a door. I knew there was some way out. But it wasn't in the room I was in, but I knew there was a way. Say a turning word for me. And a turning word, I think that this important piece in the koan here is that the turning word doesn't come from you. And you may be trying to make turning words. I will be good. I will not. And that will help. Or if I could just stop trying to win over my teacher's favor. That will do it. I'll go in and I'll just be free. I just won't care what the teacher thinks. You can feel that when, even if it's a good turning word, like I will always be loving, or I will always be open, that will be my turning word. That there's too much knowing in it, and there's too much me. It's still me in charge, and me opposed to the world, and me manufacturing something in the world. One of the most important aspects of the awakening is that it's outside that. It's, I think, the only thing you can say for certain. It's outside your control. And so you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about making your awakening. You can sort of know it's hiding somewhere. And it's a little bit like an Easter egg hunt, and you know these eggs are hidden. And it's just fun. It's fun. And there's a sense of surprise. That's the other thing. It's a sense of surprise, in the sense of being released from the body of the fox. Like, you know, you can feel, everyone here knows that feeling. It's a true thing. Even if it's just for a moment. I'm released from this body of the fox. And then what that releases you from is all the hard work of, much of the work of the life of the fox is trying to manipulate and control what other people are thinking and feeling. And, you know, other people are like remarkably uncooperative in this project. And the fascinating thing about the turning word, the world of of awakening of the free mind is that it's not that you don't include what other people are thinking or feeling. Actually, you allow them to have what they're thinking and feeling. Without it being up to you, even if you're trying to, this is very seductive, this one. If you're trying to make someone feel better or good, someone told me a beautiful story this week, how she was with someone who was really weeping. She was sitting next to them. And it was someone that she felt a great affection for. And she could feel this compulsion in her to reach over and rub the person's back who was weeping. And then as soon as she could feel this compulsion, she heard this voice in her head say, "No." She happened to be working with a koan now. No. Then she had this compulsion to, so she made it through that. She stayed. She stayed with herself. She didn't leave herself. And then she felt this compulsion to put her hand on the woman's knee, and the same thing, no. And she thought, all right, I'm good now, I'm clear, I've made it. And then she had this incredible compulsion to get a Kleenex. No. And what she discovered was that it wasn't the woman's grief that she wanted to assuage. It's that she couldn't bear what she was feeling in herself when the woman was crying. She couldn't bear to stay with herself and feel that, oh, I'm not a good person if I don't do this. That it's not about, I don't want to feel what is here. I think it means something about me if I think it means something about me if I do this or don't do this. And the amazing thing about awakening is that you can do the exact same, you can say the exact same words, you can do the exact same gesture, and one is making karma, and one is not. You can feel the kind of stickiness of the karmic realm, that it leaves a kind of debris, behind you. And it doesn't mean anything about you if you put your hand on or not in the free world, in the free realm. And in the karmic realm, you'll find also that you're placing things in people's minds that you're certain that they will feel or not feel. So you're not only doing, there's a whole lot of, it's a lot of work, all this. You may have noticed it's like there's a whole project going on of, you have to write the script for what other people are feeling, and then how they will feel when you do the thing, and then you have to write, you have to do the sets and the props and the costuming, and then everyone in the play is not cooperating, and you're just exhausted. You're really exhausted, and also suffering. And a number of you have, someone told me this beautiful story about how she'd noticed that she had this kind of mask on her of what she wanted people to see, and she just started to feel how it just didn't feel good to have it on. And she didn't really know what to do about it. She hadn't really noticed it before, but in all this silence and space, she started to feel it, and then she didn't really know what to do. And then she went for a walk, and she sees this big log sitting there, and she just wanted to sit down on it. She just goes and sits down, and it's like the log received her and gave her a sense of rest, and she just started weeping. She said, "I am so tired. I am so tired. I'm just so exhausted." And that's a moment of staying. And then the kind of what happens with that, we don't know. It's a portion of her own life that had been being held off and now is allowed to be there. And more life was possible. I think I want to read you a poem about the turning words, too. This moment of surprise. And when that happens, there's a strong, you may have a strong impulse to want to capture it and grab it. I just want to feel like this all the time. It feels so good. And this is by Seamus Heaney. It's called Postscript. And sometime, make the time to drive out west into County Clare along the flaggy shore in September or October when the wind and the light are working off each other so that the ocean on one side is wild with foam and glitter, and inland among the stones the surface of a slate gray lake is lit by the earth lightning of a flock of swans, their feathers ruffed and ruffling white on white, their fully grown, headstrong-looking heads tucked or cresting or busy underwater. Useless to think you'll park and capture it more thoroughly. You are neither here nor there, a hurry through which known and strange things pass, as big soft buffetings come at the car sideways and catch the heart off guard and blow it open. So that's nice. We like that. I think I'll just say one more thing. In the end, there's the commentary and the verse where we come back to our life and we still have the same parents and history and siblings and body and country and government and troubles. The universe is the same universe, but we're moving through it in our heart isn't closed when we meet it. And then when it's closed, we're not close to that. And we feel the closed heart. Every moment, no matter what is occurring, a portion of your awakening is here, now. And that's a beautiful portion of it. it's such a tremendous thing to feel the current of your own awakening appearing inside the trouble of your fox lives. Not falling under the law of cause and effects. Why should this prompt 500 lives as a fox? Not evading the law of cause and effect. Why should this prompt a return to human life? If you have the single eye of realization, you will appreciate how old Baizhang lived 500 lives as a fox, as lives of grace. And you can feel that blessing go out in all directions, wash through your history, wash through all the troubles, wash through all the future as lives of grace. Not subject, not cutting the chains, two faces of the same die. Not cutting the chains, not subject, 1,000 regrets, 10,000 regrets. And one more image to give you, if I could make this stop doing that. Yeah.
I think what's happening is the batteries are running out, so if maybe we just hear your beautiful voice without the microphone.
Great, I'll take this thing off. Stuck in my 500 lives of hair. Here's my flowers. Here's my Baizhang, my other Baizhang. One person came to me, and one of the, I think, to feel that we can stay with ourselves. When I can do this for myself, then everyone around me holds that blessing. And you become the bodhisattva. That's the image of the bodhisattva, being able to hear the cries of the world, because you yourself are not afraid of that territory in your own being. And someone came to me the other day and she described how she just wasn't getting this koan. And one morning she was sitting in the zendo in the very first sit, and it was kind of dark and silent. And she looked up, and across the zendo was a monk dressed in monk's clothing. It was a fox. Baizhang's fox was standing there. And it was all of her old regrets. And she felt her heart open and warm. Even that is included and welcome in the zendo. And she didn't turn away. She just felt the kind of heartache and opening of 10,000 regrets, 10,000 mistakes as lives of grace.